And it's a particular joy for us to have these wonderful evolutionary leaders presenting today on a topic that we don't talk about much, and from a perspective that I think you will find really intriguing. So we have Alan Steinfeld, the author and editor of this new book called Making Contact. We have our beloved JJ and Desiree Hurtak, authors of many books that include information about this topic. And we have John Pearson and Jean White Eagle Pearson, whose work is also in this same direction. And all of this is about expanding our consciousness. So I think you're going to find it fascinating. Alan's book is really different. This is not about shaking hands with little green men. This is what we need to do to rise to the moment. So I give you Alan Steinfeld.
Thank you, Deborah. That's exactly right. You know, we have been very limited in who we've been told we are as human beings. So when I talk about things like remote viewing, when I teach remote viewing, what comes online is a facility of consciousness that seems non-local. And this has been proven over and over again. The CIA backed the funding at the Stanford Research Institute to go in and investigate these possibilities. Do you see this little picture of me and John Mack here? Do you see that?
You look very young.
Well, it was a bunch of years ago. John hasn't been around for a while, but he was a Harvard psychiatrist. He was the head of the psychiatry school at Harvard Medical Center. And he got into this field. What are people saying? He says, how could people be having an experience that's so far out of the worldview that seems to be that seems to be the generalized kind of almost conditioned idea of what reality is. So John, as he talked to people, realized and sort of validated these experiences of alien contact were real, but they weren't real in the same way that we know reality. So he says here, we're dealing with a phenomena which violates our sense of reality, which operates in the gray zone between the physical world and the subjective. We are being asked to prove this by the methods of physical science alone. But those methods, in my view, will not yield its secrets until we find other ways of knowing. Now, that is the key, other ways of knowing. So what does that mean? It means we have to cognize reality differently, that we have to understand that perceptions are not based to five senses. This is also goes back to William Blake said that we have perceptions that are beyond what we've been qualified. So what are these other perceptions, and what is this idea of subjective reality? So I think subjective reality and what Mack and many people are implying is that that we have to understand that the linear mechanistic model for understanding the world is only half-brained. It's only half the story. And, you know, 50% of something doesn't really add up to the whole picture. So this is what's been going on here. Western science says, no, we're looking out in space. We don't see anything. We're checking for radio waves from the SETI observatories, and they're not seem to be finding anything. Me and the Hurtaks went out the other night, and we must have seen 40 strange ships going through the sky there. There is stuff out there if you know what to look for. But one of the things I like to say, our understanding and knowledge only fits what we've been cognitively taught to know. Knowledge or awareness doesn't fit what we don't know. So really making contact is orienting ourselves to a world we have yet to know. We have to jump into the unknown. We have to start to, sorry, let me take this down. We have to really start to think with the right side of our brains, think with the idea that consciousness is non-local and it's part of a bigger reality. So I've formulated a paper that triangulates consciousness, UFOs, and quantum physics. And where does quantum physics fit in? Quantum physics is the subjective reality, is the nonlinear approach to the world. So quantum physics comes down to the fact that subjective observation of the world is likely impossible. That the world is based on what we can see and know, that there is a subjective proof, if that fits into anyone's idea. Okay, let me just tell you here. Thierry Desjardins called it the noosphere of a global consciousness. And he says, when we become resonant, when we become one in this understanding of the great noosphere, we start to tap into the greater reality, the fact that we're all together. I actually end my book with a quote from my interview with Bruce Lipton, who says, the next evolution for us is to recognize that we're all part of a larger community, getting together to share awareness, to create a living organism that would be called humanity. We are not humans until we create humanity. That is when we recognize we're all cells in the same living organism and share in a coherent fashion the thoughts, the information that all of us have. You know, this is what multicellular animals do. There are colonies of cells, and something happens which Bruce calls the synergy of awareness, where those colonies come together to share awareness. This is the threshold we are really at. We're at the threshold of sharing awareness, because he says, when humanity is complete, the earth as a living organism completes a phase of evolution, since we are the receptor sites of the earth, since our consciousness is extended into space. When we become together as a unity, as a single organism, that creates a oneness for the planet. We are not humans until we have humanity. Humanity is the overall being. So when we come together as a one, with a voice of one, of singularity, that is when we'll be able to meet other ones. This is the greater ecology of evolution. This is where we're at. So to understand the synergy of awareness, we have to think differently. And I think quantum physics is a way of knowing from a subjective reality where we start to share the phenomena as a single mind. I hope we're not losing people here on this advanced concept, but quantum physics comes down to the subjective reality, and we share that subjective reality. We create a synergy, and that synergy of awareness is a sort of awakening to the greater humanity. So I talk about quantum physics because the government themselves has given us a hint about this being a quantum physics phenomena. So recently, and everyone's talking about the government disclosure coming up in June, and we can talk a little bit about that. The phenomena has been rebranded from UFOs to UAPs. That goes from unidentified flying objects to unexplained aerial phenomena. So the government are saying this is not object, this is phenomena. This includes more than just little things in the sky. And the guy who wrote that statement is someone named Luis Elizondo. Luis Elizondo says the phenomena, also in the secret document leaked, he says the phenomena is now quantum physics. What makes quantum physics so unique is the observer effect. I think these beings are using this level, these beings who are controlling that craft to understand how to use consciousness in a more fundamental way than we've been taught. So what I say is the observer effect happens when you see something and you define it as such. You collapse what's called the wave function. You say, okay, this is what it is. That's called comprehension. Okay, this is a table, that's a tree, that's a chair. Now, those are collapsed wave functions that concretize our reality as a thing. I'm suggesting we don't collapse the wave functions if we're going to understand the reality that these beings exist on. That means we go from comprehension to apprehension. Apprehension means if you're standing in front of a tree, you don't identify it as a tree. It doesn't mean it's not. It means you remove the labels. It means that things can now exist in a cluster of meaning instead of saying, this is what it is. When we start to think as an apprehensive sort of reality, the wave function does not collapse in results. This is how quantum computing works. I was just in Las Vegas. So you compute the roll of the dice, let's say, and there it is, it's 7. But if you're rolling the dice before it lands, every answer is in a superposition. It's superpositions of possibility that really start to key into the true functions of an apprehensive consciousness, not a comprehensive. We don't want to collapse the wave function when we're dealing with this level of reality. We want to keep all possibilities alive as if we're dealing more with a symbolic reality. Lots of people say that the ET's notions of realities are much more symbolic. And that means, let's say when you give me a text and I give you a thumbs up, that doesn't mean yes. It could mean yes, but there's a cluster of possibilities. We have to start to think along those terms of multiple aspects of understanding. We have to apprehend the world in front of us as possibilities. So quantum physics computes the superpositions of things. We need to think as superpositional beings on multiple levels of reality that consider many approaches to the world. Let's not live in the collapse wave functions of identification and saying, I know this. Let's live in an abstract world of possibilities. Now that's hard for humans to understand because we've been so trained to define, this is what it is. I know what this is. This is it. I know. But I'm not saying we don't know. Let's just float it as possibilities. And then we'll start to meet these beings on an even playing field where they live in a superposition of awareness. If that makes sense, if I haven't lost anybody, we need to think in the abstract. We need to stop defining who we are. I think that's the big problem. We are so invested in our identity that we need to be solid in who we are in order to think we're functional in the world. If we start to live in a non-identifiable sense of self, but knowing who we are without identifying it, we can start to meet these beings on their own ground. And that is what they're waiting for us to wake up to. The fact that we're much more complex, we're much more evolved, we're much more aware of these subtle realms when we stop identifying with the self as this. I mean, there's a great line, I always use this in my presentations, that JJ wrote in The End of Suffering. It was from the New Yorker magazine. And a guy is sitting at a bar and he's yelling at the bartender saying, hey, pal, you have no idea who I think I am. So that understanding of the concretized self is in the way of making contact, because when your reality meets that reality, the ground beneath us is swept out, because reality is more solid than the earth we're standing on. And so when that is no longer what we've been programmed to think it is, our sense of self disappears and we need to function in the abstract. And the more I would like to have a discussion about really what that means and how to get out of the linear mind and start to use this other facility to bring in multiple levels of consciousness, because it's only on multiple levels of consciousness that we'll be able to start making contact. They are talking to us in the language of a higher reality. I always say, when you talk to a dog, you don't bark at them. You use the more sophisticated language. This is what we need to learn. And this is what John Mack hinted at as other ways of knowing. So that's the first establishment of what's possible.
I think that was spectacular.
Okay. I hope it made sense. I didn't.
You are stretching our minds in
right, because remember,
very important ways.
Yes, reality stretched to a new dimension, to new realities, never returns to where it's been. This is what seeing this phenomenon is all about. It's about stretching our minds, making contact with something beyond the limited personality. Okay, I'll stop. JJ, go ahead.
Thank you so much.
And Alan, you have other speakers in your book, so that you have given one of 10 different perspectives.
Yeah, I'll read the names of those in the book, which are incredible. And it is available, of course, on Amazon. In fact, it was #1 for new releases for last week.
Thank you.
It's great. Linda Moulton Howe, who's an incredible, really researcher. And then also Whitley Strieber, who did the book Communion, and John Mack.
I'll go through this.
Also Nick Pope, Grant Cameron, ourselves, and a few other really exciting people. So we just want to get going on. We want to merge what Alan was saying also with some other possibilities seen in December of 2018.
Over the Pentagon area.
Over the Pentagon.
If you read very carefully between the lines of this book, you will see the smoking gun.
So yes.
We're seeing here with colleagues of ours were able to capture in Washington a couple years ago, where this strange pentagonal shaped object appears over the super intelligence
place of the Pentagon. And this was in the evening. And initially when I saw this, we kind of dismissed it. But then our very good friend, Jaime Malzahn out of Mexico, who actually Dr. Jack got him into this field, and he's a researcher, did analysis of 4 different people who actually simultaneously reported seeing this. And 2 guys were in the car together, and then there was 2 others. This is also the similar vehicle that was in 2009 over the Kremlin. So basically it's appeared in 2009 over the Kremlin, and then in 2018 over the Pentagon. So you have to say this is maybe one of the reasons why things are kind of opening up. And you may know that Marco Rubio actually put in a little clause in the COVID bill that was signed in January that said that the Senate Intelligence Committee has to have access to all top secret documents on unidentified flying objects, or UAPs. And that is the FBI, the CIA, the NSA, and all the other alphabet agencies have to give their information to the Senate Intelligence Committee. And they, by June 24th of this year, this is why Alan's book is so critical, needs to report something to the public. Now, some people go everywhere from like they're not going to say much at all to they're going to start really releasing information. So this is just an interesting thing. So that again is December 2018. And let's go on. This just got released. You might have seen it last week from the USS Russell, but it appeared in July 2019.
Again, you see a astrophysical form similar to what we saw in the earlier documentation, both over Russia and the United States, over the seat of the superpowers, telling them essentially to look up. In my experience of contact in 73, I was told to put the pyramidal geometry at the beginning of the book.
And of course, there's different UFOs. There's cigar shaped.
Because it exemplifies the evolutionary building block of the carbon atom.
So let's take a look at, these are like the recap of what's going on. What Alan was showing you was from November 2004, the Nimitz in Princeton over 2 days at least. They had some sightings of extraterrestrial. This is almost all Navy. That's very interesting because we've said for a long time the Navy actually has more information. And then we showed you, but that vehicle was more of what they call a tic tac. Looks like literally the thing you stick in your mouth, a tic tac, the white kind of small globe. Then July 2019, the USS Russell, which we showed you the pyramidal shape. And then also in July, the kid, the Raphael Peralta, and the John Finn all saw this. And then there has been stuff on the East Coast for those living on the East Coast in 2014, and also in 2014 and 2015 with the Roosevelt. So these, actually the ones on the East Coast took place almost over a whole month of sightings. And this is what Elizondo has really talked about and what's come out, as you had seen in Alan's film. So there's a lot. And that's why they have to start doing something. They have to start talking.
So here we see a copy of my book, and that first cosmogram or cosmic picture of a multicolored capstone over the scroll of Esther, which is the only scroll in the Bible that speaks of a higher teaching going from Ethiopia to India, showing the universality of God's word. And the fact that the scripture is connected with geometric form is important, because I was told the whole process is the coming together of a new spirituality with a new science.
And we have like tetrahedrons and pyramids within our body. We have pyramidal brain cells.
Studied by Professor Tompkins and others at the University of Mack, California.
Well, and so it's a very strong geometry, a basic geometry, but wouldn't it be strange if a lot of the pyramids in the world were based on things that the ancients had seen?
Here's the experience I had in using the sacred names, which you find in the Sanskrit tradition, you find in the biblical, you find it throughout the world. As I was saying, by a pyramid with Desiree in the Tulu, Mexico, approximately 20 years ago, some of you know, I was chanting, and all of a sudden this tremendous light shield came around my body.
But what's interesting is the fact that we believe, as Alan was trying to say, and what this book is really all about, is that it has to do with consciousness, not just physics, not classical physics, if anything, quantum physics. And quantum physics tells us about the non-local reality. So you can be here right now sitting and you can be in tune. In fact, one of the things we noticed, and we just talked to, we had a big event here in Sedona with Alan for his book launch. It was one of the freer states where we could do that. And we had Travis Walton, if anyone's familiar with him. Actually, 45 years ago, he had an experience where he was hit by also a beam of light taken aboard a spaceship. He was gone for 5 days. For only 30 minutes of that time, he remembers stuff. But what he told us later, and this is kind of Alan prodded him to say this on stage one of the first times, is that after that, he's had 2 other experiences with other people who are also witnesses seeing really large vehicles. So once you make that connection, even with higher intelligence, with ultra-terrestrial intelligence, which we believe is here, there is that ongoing consciousness linkage.
The bottom line is we're being prepared for superluminal communication, as illustrated here with the light over the 7th seal or chakra, illustrating that we have a higher mind, as Ellen just said, that can work with the universal intelligence. So to rephrase Huxley, this is the time of the brave new mind. This is the opportunity where our subjective, the esoteric and the exoteric converge. This is the time that the male and female side converge. This is the sign of the human evolution, and what the keys of Enoch called the higher evolution. So very simply, we are living in very exciting times that all levels have to be open. It's not just the intellectual, it's the heart. It's the whole vibratory nature of our body coming together, realizing that we are a vessel and vehicle for the process of transition, and ultimately, to use a spiritual metaphor, ascension, contact with that of the 5th dimension.
Yes, and that's interesting. Dr. Hurtak mentioned the 5th dimension, because what people are learning now is that even extraterrestrial spacecraft are not exclusively working with the 3rd or 4th dimension, 4th dimension being time, but the 5th dimension. They can come through walls. They can take people out through walls. But we actually, as many of you know, talk about really higher intelligence. Dr. Hurtak had a unique experience that was working with what we now popularly call the ultra-terrestrial, which are higher spiritual consciousness beings, and they can be equated to those of higher dimensional reality. So the universe is opening up, and we're opening up to that. And people are starting to become more and more aware. And we encourage people to meditate, to listen, to tune in.
As we see here, another cosmogram from our teaching of the multi-levels that we can engage in. At the bottom of the screen, we have Mother Earth. The meditation process opens our mind to ultimately the higher levels of the vision of the dove, the symbol of peace, the symbol of higher education, the symbol of unity amongst the various diverse cultures towards what we will call a shift from humankind to spacekind and beyond.
So we want to encourage everyone to really tune into their higher selves, which actually are, in our opinion, is already in touch with these higher beings, and they are waiting for our interconnection with them, whether it's on a physical level or on a multi-dimensional level. So this is really our message, our work, and also ways of meditation with ancient sacred expressions to tune into those greater vibrations.
So we are putting on the line the actual work that we did at Stanford Research Institute with the top mathematicians and physicists, including naval intelligence back in the 70s.
On remote viewing, where you could be sitting here and seeing something on the other side of the globe and really accurately knowing what it is.
And as you will see in Alan's book, I actually state that 42 years ago, I showed the pictures of the cosmic others. Unfortunately, this was never broadcast in the United States. It went out only through Latin American satellite channels, but the sense of urgency now requires us to see that there is a long history of investigation, and now we can put the jewels, so to speak, on the table.
And if I can speak for Alan, the three of us work quite a bit on remote viewing, which is, as I said, seeing on the other side of the globe, maybe even seeing backwards in time, and sometimes in the future of time. Precognition is tied into that, according to the work of Russell Targ. But the main thing is because even these other beings are using that ability. They actually all have the ability of, we'll say, remote viewing, contact, non-local awareness. And we need to now, as a human species, to begin our own non-local awareness. And that contact brings an entanglement. These are words also in quantum physics.
Why do we do this? Because we are essentially multidimensional, local and non-local humans in a vast and awesome universe.
Thank you, Deborah and Diane and everyone, for joining us and organizing this.
Thank you so much for this brief presentation that represents so many years of study of these phenomena and wisdom about what they mean.
I also want to say JJ is being a little humble. He's had firsthand contact with these beings in a conscious form. And I think that's really what people need to know, that it's not just belief, it is actuality. So this is another level of the phenomena.
Mainly the ultra-terrestrial type.
I was taken up and brought back, and I was interviewed by top government people, and they have the story. They were not prepared for the new spirituality, and this is where all of us come in, because it's the story of unity. It's the understanding of the science behind the ancient myth structure of the Eastern and Western traditions that can bring us together with the indigenous. This is so important. And Kurt knows this so well. Unless we work with our indigenous brothers and sisters now.
And Oscar.
Yes, Oscar, of course. But if we do not go beyond the intellectualizing of new information, we're not going to make this change. It will come really through the meek and the humble of the world who understand what Mother Earth is telling us. It's the vibrations of the heart, vibrations of the soul, vibrations of what we will call the new mind, the brave new mind, the higher mind that will bring us together. This is the triple power that the ancient Sanskrit scriptures speak of.
But the planet is really going through changes, and so we all have to be prepared for
And we
those.
all have you out there. We're all a team.
Okay, thank you, Deborah.
Thank you so much. And both the Hurtaks and Alan have talked about how we need to increase our understanding and raise our frequency so that we can be prepared to communicate with these other intelligences, particularly the higher intelligences. And so that's a perfect lead in to Jean White Eagle Pearson and John Pearson, and Jean's vision for how we might learn to communicate in this way. So I give you the pair sense.
Yeah, I want to start by saying that Alan, your presentation, and JJ and Desiree, your presentation resonates very, very strongly with
Right.
us. Alan, the bridge I want to make with you is that we've had the blessing of being able to have grounding in Native American teachings. And one of the things we are aware of is that, you know, our languages, whether they are English or German or Russian, are start and stop languages. We have nouns and pronouns,
Right.
and we identify object and verb, that kind of thing. The Native Americans, the way they speak, everything is in motion. Everything is a vibration. Everything is a relationship. And physicists actually go to friends that we have, like Joseph Ryle, Beautiful Painted Arrow, to ask questions about things that they don't understand. And the Native Americans are able to explain it to them because they have a different way of languaging it and therefore a different way of thinking about it. So that's
Correct.
one. The other thing I want to say is that the work that Jean and I have done over the years, particularly with ceremonial dances that involve fasting and movement and sound, put people into an altered state of consciousness where the connection with the ultra-terrestrials in particular, and sometimes the extraterrestrials, is very common. And we've had many experiences with that. So we know the reality of what you are talking about. We've experienced it ourselves. We've had those kinds of communications. What we're doing, what Jean's vision's about, is building a bridge to the future. Okay, it's saying, okay, humanity is emerging into a new level of consciousness. The reality of extraterrestrials and ultra-terrestrials are real. How can we do something that takes advantage of that? So I want to turn it over to Jean to talk about her vision. This is what I believe is the next step.
Yeah, and I want to say thank you to Alan and Desiree and to JJ, because the work that you are doing it's crucial right now. The consciousness is shifting. Each one of us that's on this call and in the evolutionary leaders are very aware that something's happening, and something is happening on the collective level. This is the book that I wrote. It's called Eyes Open, Looking for the 12. And there's a story behind the looking for the 12. We actually have found quite a number of people that have seen the exact same thing that I have seen, or they've seen some part of it. And we're beginning to connect up now, and we're putting all the pieces together. It's a little bit like putting a cosmic puzzle together here. But what I think probably the best place for me to begin at this point is to actually give you the quick story of what the vision is, where it came from. I was around the age of 15 or 16, and I started having a dream. And I did not know that this was going to become a recurring dream. And it became a recurring dream. So many weeks would go by, so many months would go by, and the dream would reappear. And that went on into my late 30s. I'm 77 years young right now. So there was a period there on up until 2009 when the dream did not appear. I forgot about the dream. And then in 2009, it reappeared. And this time when it reappeared with detail. And what I was seeing for all those, the couple of decades when it kept recurring over and over again, is there were two scenes in it. One is I'm standing at the bottom of a very high hill. On that hill, or a low mountain, were a certain configuration of buildings. They were white, and we actually have architects that are now working on what it was that I have seen. The second scene in the dream, quickly, I'm inside what looks like a hallway, something that you might see in a university or a a big organization that has buildings that have one whole wall was glass. You could see out of it. The other wall was solid, and people are passing by each other as though they're on the way to a class. They might stop and they might converse with each other. But what I noticed in the dream is they're not all human. There were many different species that were passing, talking, conversing, and it was a very natural scene. These two pictures, the one of me at the bottom of the hill and then the other one, that was all I was given. For close to over 20 years, I'm given this these two visuals. In 2009, we happened to be in Croatia at the time, and suddenly the dream came back. And when it came back this time, I heard a voice say, "You're to build a university." And I'm thinking, what? Because university is not what it actually is or was. It's the only thing in my lexicon at the time that represented a very sophisticated way of education, right? So I remember sitting up in the bed, and suddenly these pieces started coming in of showing me what was getting ready to happen, that this was to be a configuration of buildings put in a very specific design, made of very specific materials, put in very specific places upon the earth, that would then begin to create a particular frequency. And from cradle to grave, a human that goes into this facility that we now are calling interstellar universities. Anyone who would go in, a higher state of consciousness is sustained. And it at the same time is emitting a signal into space that is saying that the human consciousness has gotten to the place now to where it can interact overtly and in an ongoing fashion and in a good way, healthy way. Up to this point, the only thing that can happen, we have not built these yet because the consciousness isn't ready yet. We know that if we built these, that they would probably not survive, because something has got to happen within the mass consciousness first. When Barbara Marx Hubbard and I met, we both got quite excited, because the thing that Barbara saw is she saw that the consciousness itself was beginning to converge, that all the many different efforts being made around the planet to help raise the consciousness of humanity was beginning to take place. She could see this starting to happen, and what I was given, the piece I was seeing, was this. I intuited what she saw, but I couldn't see what it was. She intuited what I saw, but she couldn't see what it was. This is the expansion. This is the moving beyond Earth. This is humans going into a cosmic community in a healthy way. But how do you get from here to there? And this is the work that John and I've been doing for all of these years. We've been calling up on the Native American training that we have. We've been calling up on many of the traditional ancient wisdoms that we know. We have involved hundreds of people around the planet who now are beginning to help shift things in a way that the consciousness, the frequency is beginning to change.
Yeah, so the Interstellar University is designed to be a place to contain, sustain, and nurture this higher level of consciousness, and eventually be a place for interaction on an overt basis with our extraterrestrial star brothers and sisters and ultra-terrestrials as well. So that's what we're about. And we're taking steps. We've got teams that we're putting together and putting one foot in front of the other, create a world level syllabus that draws from all the best practices and traditions and teachings around the world and that kind of thing. So
Edgar Mitchell, when Edgar learned about what it is that I had seen, Edgar said what I was actually given was a blueprint. We are not going into any of the detail right now of what's involved inside this complex of buildings and gardens. But when Edgar saw it, he said, what you have seen is a blueprint to help get the human race on track for a higher stage of evolution.
And what Sixto Paz Wells said to us was, when he heard about the vision, he said, what you've seen is liberation for the human mind.
I deeply apologize because it's very difficult to take something that is quite large and quite massive to give you just an overview. All I know is, I will say this, and JJ, you touched upon it. There's a quote in my book from the Hathor material that in terms of human evolution, love is where you're heading. And this is the underlying foundation of everything that we are doing right now, is to help the consciousness get to that level of frequency, a vibrational field, creating a resonant field so that the entire species can move into this different way of being. So it's a little bit like drinking from a fire hose. I'm so sorry.
It was an awesome presentation. Thank you so much. And I'm so delighted to bring you all together. And I know that Jean and John also work with sound and syllables, and the Hurtaks do the same in a different way. So it's always a joy to bring together evolutionary leaders who are members of our community and whose work not only converges, but can inspire one another.
Just want to share a little screen thing from the New York Times. This is from July 23rd, 2020, New York Times. Eric Davis, who now works for Aerospace Corporation, gave a classified briefing to the Defense Department agency as recently on retrievals from off-world vehicles not on this earth. This is what, when they roll out the vehicles and the bodies, this is the confirmation. We're looking for confirmation. We already have disclosure by the government, by the Navy, saying UFOs are real. The guy Remick saying confirmation is when we see those off-world retrieval vehicles. July 23rd, 2020. It's out there. Eric Davis is part of a big unfolding disclosure discussion, but that's what we need. And that's what the resistance, that's what the phase is. Okay, we're just going to tell them, yeah, there probably is, but we're not going to show them the facts, the actual objects, until we put enough pressure by people like us saying, give us the info, let us have it. Let us see the bodies, because as Luis Alessandro and all these people are now coming forward, are implying this phenomena started in 2004. Yeah, we have Nimitz at 2000. This goes back 75 years that no one's talking about. No one's talking about who's actually controlling those craft. Oh yeah, we have craft, we can't explain it. Well, where are they from? Who's behind it? How are they made? These are the bigger questions that maybe it's step-by-step unfoldment, but this is what needs to be addressed if this is going to become a reality that we're all waiting for, and making contact will begin. Jay,
I can jump in here by saying that I gave a semi-classified briefing to the United Nations showing pictures of the bodies. So one step even up beyond the so-called ET debris that Davis is speaking of are the actual extraterrestrial specimens. I presented this to world forums. There is an information close down that has operated in the United States for more than 70 years. Linda addresses this. You address this, Ellen. This is the importance of stepping up and reframing. We have to go beyond technical information to actual face-to-face encounters with the extraterrestrial and the ultra-terrestrial life forms that see that we have little time to shall we say, change and rectify the whole trajectory towards self-destruction.
Right. So we're optimistic about the June release from the Senate Intelligence Committee, Marco Rubio, connected with Harry Reid and others. But on the other hand, if you go back to the Israeli release from Professor Eshad, who was supposedly with the secret space program of Israel, and this came out in the news, many of you saw this.
November 2020.
He indicated that even the ETs don't think that we're prepared for contact. So the question is why? You know, is it because we're too military based? I mean, one of the things that Elizondo came out with is the fact that they really have gone around in many places, including Bentwaters and the northern part of our United States, and neutralized our nuclear weapons in their silos underneath the ground to show us that that's not the way. So that's one aspect. Another aspect is something that Linda Moulton Howe brings down. We wrote about it actually in Alan's book, even in our chapter, and that is the way they communicate. They can be very, very powerful and almost overwhelming in their consciousness thoughts. That's why we ourselves need to develop, and we've been at lectures, not co-speaking, but same lectures as David Chalmers, and Alan was with us a few years ago for one of those. You know, the consciousness powers that we have to develop within ourselves is part of what's happening. And I believe that is the university. We call it a university without walls, where we're teaching the fact of who we really are, our cosmic memory, our own inner self that can develop into a greater being and really stand face to face and not pass out with these extraterrestrial realities.
So we need a new psychology, a new understanding of consciousness expansion, a new spirituality to bring together the downtrodden of the world and let them tell their story with a sense of dignity and in unity.
One of the things that even Dr. Hurtak had picked up in his own unique experience is the fact that this planet is going through some massive changes. So they told him that 64 areas of science were going to be advanced on this planet. This is since the early 70s, so that we're more prepared. And now what's that preparation for? Is it preparation for contact? Yes, absolutely, because they need to be closer in touch with us as these environmental other changes take place. The other thing is preparation, so we have a choice. And I love that, our moment of choice. I'm going to give a plug for it again, make sure everyone gets it out there, because every moment we have a choice. And we had a friend here recently, and he had developed nanotechnology, and then he realized that that nanotechnology that he was developing could be used very negatively. And so he actually stopped his entire project and stopped his entire company. So that was a major choice he had to make on how the technology we're developing now gets used. And it can be used to save the planet, or it can be used to destroy the planet. And it really is our moment of choice. Thank you, Deborah.
I just want to say we cannot do this quick enough. They are waiting for us to clean up our act. We are at a really critical point. We need to shift. This needs to be in the awareness of every single person that we as a human species need to get our act together, because we are at the 11th hour, 12th hour. And they're waiting for that.
The bottom line is networking, teaching, and seeing, as it were, the positive solutions and not dwell upon the negative things that divide us, as the national media that tries to rob people even of the middle ground from their great gifts and opportunities they have. The cosmic others enjoy seeing us work together as a team. This team here is critical mass. All of you working together with the new information that Alan has put together, and others like Alan, realize we've got a new, shall we say, blueprint of unity on all 7 basic levels. And the harmonic within and without is the key. This is what Ellen Hynek tried to do with Close Encounters with Steven Spielberg. We did that. We did all that music with Marcel Vogel, behind the scenes, working with some of the top musicians. We have to bring a global orchestration, a global tone of raising consciousness. It cannot be done only intellectually. It has to be done through the right hemisphere and through the heart. That's the Trinity within that was mythologized, so people don't take it seriously, but we must push the envelope of a new spirituality, a new science guided by consciousness, and a new love story. We must be the greater love and not the confusion.
I have to keep showing up and saying yes. Each one of us has to keep showing up and saying yes. Because as we do that, we continue to shift the frequency. We raise it. We're creating a different resonant field for the whole.
You know, we live in a time where we have the internet working now openly in all directions. And we need to take advantage of the breakthroughs at our fingertips to broadcast a bigger and a more powerful signal of unity at this time. I can't underestimate what the situation is that we face with global control of information the wrong way. We need to be able to, should we say, engineer a type of new raising of consciousness through the media, that what I would call a new public commons through our resources in India, Australia, other places. If the local media in the United States doesn't want to tell the true story after 70 years, according to Linda, we better wake up and realize that we have to forge the media linkage that we need, but it has to come through vibrations. Loving vibrations, positive vibrations, 24/7. This is a situation that could slide easily into biospheric collapse, to use Barbara Marx Hubbard's idiom. We have to understand how precious these conversations are and must be broadcast with music of the heart.
And I have to say, we did a program with Whitley, Strieber, and Linda Moulton Howe and Alan for the book. And at the end, Linda, who's really just a UFO researcher, although she's fantastic, said, you know, the real answer to all of this is love. And Dr. Hurtak even coined a term, like some people have an exo-racism, you know, that like, and Travis said that too, you know, these guys look different from us. If they start interacting with us, you know, we might say, oh, they're cool, but ultimately we're going to say, hey, they're different. We don't like them anymore. So there's a lot of evolution. And so we add, as our work with the Academy for Future Sciences, in addition to love, we also have to have wisdom, and it has to be a higher wisdom, not just something from the news media that they tell you. We have to really bring that information down, and that we feel is part of the consciousness field that we're all working with. And I always qualify that that consciousness field is not just global, it's universal.
Thank you to all of you for this truly amazing presentation.